Shana Tova, everybody. It's wonderful. By the way, you can't start your clocks yet. I'm just an introduction. It's great to see everybody. As I say year in and year out, we're not just here on Rosh Hashanah, and we're not just here on Yom Kippur. And I know that it's an invigorating experience to be around other Jews, especially now. But we do this every Shabbat, and I invite you to join us. We're here, and you may need us. So please take me up on that invitation. One more. Go. Late summer. Texas. It's a late summer evening in Texas. It's 1953. And a football coach, famous for his day, his name was John Thomas. 17 seasons deep, he had coached the Corpus Christi Green Hornets. Strange town to name today in the synagogue. Corpus Christi Green Hornets. And he walks into a cramped room of concerned local reporters. He's got a few of his players standing behind him. Helmets tucked at their hips. They've got grass stains like badges of honor on their jerseys. And the coach is brisk. He's matter of fact. He's almost neighborly. And he begins an oration that makes its way into the local newspapers. I know you're worried about our season. Know this. First you organize, then you mobilize. And we're just organizing. Don't worry. We'll be ready to roll by Saturday, he says. We've got only 20 boys, I know, but I'm not crying. 20 boys, that's just information. And then he delivers a line that outlives the season. It outlives the schedule. It even outlives the names in the box score. He looks at the reporters and he says, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Coach John Thomas, not Billy Ocean. And I know, half of you are humming that impossibly catchy 80s hook, and you're picturing Michael Douglas and Danny DeVito and Kathleen Turner in the music video, because nothing says tough like the cast of Romancing the Stone awkwardly lip-syncing in tuxedos. And if you don't have that in your mind, it's because you're too young. But that phrase, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, it didn't stick because of a music video or because it was an 80s anthem. It stuck because it sounds like it's saying a lot without saying anything at all. It doesn't name a feeling. It dodges feelings. It doesn't tell us what to do. It doesn't tell us how to act. It is all drumbeat. It is no blueprint. And that's why we eat it up. It is a Rorschach test of resolve. And we pour our own story into the empty spaces between going and tough and pretend like it means something, that it works as some kind of pep talk. But it doesn't. Because if it did work, my sermon would be a 9-word locker room slogan, and we'd be starting Musaf, and the takeaway would be 0. Some of you would be happy, but the takeaway would be 0. 9 words. Because can't every rabbi just fall back on that line this Rosh Hashanah? When the going gets tough, the tough get going. There's not a Jew in the world for whom that line doesn't resonate perfectly in 5786. But it doesn't identify at all what we're feeling. And that's the task. The introspective nature of these sacred holy days demands an emotional, psychological reckoning. Yeah, going is tough for the Jews. I don't need to list the statistics. I don't need to give you the examples. It's not theoretical. It's spray painted on campus walls. It's shouted on street corners. It's real. And I'm not going to waste your time reiterating what you've already lived through. But what are we actually feeling And that question can lead us into another linguistic trap. How many of us have sat across from a spouse? Speaking more to husbands than wives here. How many of us have sat across from a spouse or a parent or a therapist and been asked, "What are you feeling?" And our tongues are tied. Not because the feelings aren't there, not because the feelings aren't real, but because the vocabulary, the wherewithal, the ability to describe them isn't there. So we throw out some umbrella adjectives that sound descriptive, but they also say nothing. And I will give you an example. After one of my dozens, sadly, of shared Instagram posts capturing public displays of Jew hatred this year, a friend wrote back, "I'm getting increasingly more afraid. I know this is exactly what they want, but I don't know what to do to not feel afraid." Is that accurate? What are we feeling today? And why? Well, we're going to start with Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl endured Auschwitz. He later gave us the classic Man's Search for Meaning, and many of you have been reintroduced to him since Rachel Goldberg brought her murdered hostage son Hirsch's dependence on a Frankl quote back to us. I said it to you last year. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. And Frankl devoted his life to studying how human beings find meaning, not in spite of suffering, but through it. And in the ashes of Auschwitz, he saw that survival itself, it was tethered not to bread, not to breath, but to some sense of purpose, a why strong enough to carry a person through even the darkest how. And before this year, I referenced Frankl only twice in 20 years as a rabbi. Twice. Last year on Yizkor, when I gave you that quote, during Pesach, April 16th, 2020, that was when it was at the beginning of what was the coronavirus, because COVID, the word, hadn't even come to us yet. We were petrified. I gave you a quote then. And now, for the third time, I'll give you Viktor Frankl. Here it is. An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. And we know Frankl wasn't writing from theory. His insight is that when human beings are placed under unbearable pressure, placed in the crucible of suffering, the things that we do, the ways we react, they may look irrational from out there, but they are in fact the most normal thing in the world. There's a reflex in the face of the abnormal, my friends, a natural response to the most unnatural of circumstances. And given our collective memory as Jews, all of us, our collective memory, whether it's the last 25 years, because that's how old you are, the last 50 years, because that's how old you are, the last 75 years, we all know the present, right now, sure as heck feels abnormal and unnatural in comparison to any other year. And therefore, our reaction as Jews to this moment in time, as crazy as it may seem to those looking from the outside in, it will be 100% normal for us as Jews. Why is this an abnormal year? I give you journalist Nadav Eyal. He describes a triangle of hate pressing on Jewish communities from three directions at once. Each has different language, different ideology, converging on a single target, the Zionist Jewish collective. And what makes this moment feel so abnormal is not the intensity alone. It's the mainstreaming of ideas once confined to the extreme. The first spear of this triangle is fundamentalist Islam. That is the theological spear. It is a hatred wrapped in divine sanction. Jews are not only political opponents. Religiously, we are marked as infidels, destined for subjugation or worse. Zionism becomes the ultimate blasphemy. Diaspora Jews are labeled global proxies of this blasphemy. And that's why schools, synagogues, community centers, Jewish grocery stores have become targets globally. It used to feel far away, born of a Middle Eastern conflict. But now it's bleeding into the streets of London, Brussels, Detroit, New York, San Francisco, and it's chanted on college campuses, and it's preached on TikTok. Second spear. That's the far right. Conspiratorial spear. Genetic code has never changed for these people. The Jew as the other. The globalist, the hidden hand controlling banks, media, migration, controlling modernity itself. 2008, we'll go backwards. The global economy cracked, you remember. And a British National Party leader, a Holocaust denier, he said, when refrigerators empty, the far right will rise again. Now, history's proven that truth. We know that's accurate. But history's also proven how ready the world is to be deceived. What's chilling is how formerly fringe ideas, waiting for an economic crisis in order to go mainstream, well, there is no economic crisis. But they're getting laundered as respectable debate anyway. Pseudo-historians, YouTube channels talking about both sides of the Holocaust. You got major podcasts flirting with the Great Replacement theory, as if it's just another policy argument. It's not. You got the oldest hatred in modern language, and we're being reminded how willing those that harbor even an inkling of anti-Semitism are to be deceived. Most dangerous person in America right now. Talk about him next week. Who is it? It's Tucker Carlson. We'll save that. That's the second spear. Third, radical left. This is the ideological delegitimization spear. Here, the Jew is not the other of theology or conspiracy. The Jew is the villain of history itself. Israel framed as the original sin of the West. Colonialism, apartheid, racism incarnate. Talk about that tomorrow. So Jews who identify with Israel are cast as moral pariahs. It's not criticism of Israel's policy. It is the denial of Jewish peoplehood. The demand that Jews alone, among every other nation, have to forfeit their right to self-determination. You've got boycotts, academic blacklists. You've got entertainment blacklists. You've got public shaming to enforce ideological purity. And in this new intersectional politics of our time, you got far-left activists marching beside Islamist groups that would reject every other progressive value that they claim to hold, but they're united in one hatred, and that is of us. 3 spears, 1 target, different language, same outcome. And what makes this moment abnormal is the convergence. Theological hatred, conspiratorial hatred, ideological hatred, pressing on Jews simultaneously. It's the mainstream seepage, respectable institutions giving air to ideas that were once banished to the fringe. You've got the algorithmic acceleration. Social media is monetizing outrage until it becomes identity itself. And then you've got the psychological toll. The sense that Jewish safety, Jewish belonging, Jewish moral legitimacy are now all up for debate at once. Yeah, going's getting tough for the Jews. Maybe my friend's choice of buzzwords on Instagram was spot on. Are we becoming increasingly afraid? Is it fear we're feeling? Know this. The Eskimos, they have dozens of words for snow. The Bedouins have words for sand and wind that are so precise they can describe a storm's mood as easily as its size. And why? Because, my friends, language reflects the reality of a people. And the Hebrew of the Torah gives us a lot more than fear for what we Jews feel. living at the fault lines of history, and that's what I want to share with you this morning. Yeah, the going is tough for the Jews, but as my wife likes to remind me, don't just name the problem, offer a solution. Which brings us to the tough need to get going and what that means. You're going to get parts 2, 3, and 4 tomorrow and Yom Kippur. Frankel was telling us that what we are feeling is not weakness. It's normal. It's human. It is, in fact, the most natural response to the most unnatural circumstances. Those unnatural circumstances are what's happening outside the walls of this institution. And when it comes to the abnormal, the unnatural, Torah does not retreat into poetry or philosophy. It walks us straight up to the most extreme edge it can imagine, and that is the battlefield. The place where courage buckles under the weight of what's coming. The Torah chooses that moment. The wandering Israelites of the desert, they are outnumbered, they are outarmed, they are outmatched, and that is the blueprint for every future moment when Jews will stand on the precipice of dread. That's where we are. What does the Torah say? Ki tetzeh lemilchama aluvecha. When you take the field against the enemy, when you see horses and chariots, when forces bigger than your own are stacked against you, and before a single sword is lifted, the high priest steps forward, and he does not promise victory. He does not deny feelings. He gathers all of those emotions that the soldiers have in their chests, and he looks at them and he says, Shema Yisrael. Atem krovim hayom lemilchama al oivechem. And I'm going to translate it once. Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel. You're approaching battle today against your enemies. Al yerach levavchem, al tir'u, va'al tichpazu, va'al te'aratzu mipneihem. Let not your courage falter. Do not be in fear. Do not panic. Do not be in dread of them. And it almost sounds like the Torah is banning fear itself, as if the high priest is telling the soldiers, feel nothing. But no. Jewish tradition is very clear. This is not about erasing emotion. Rashi, Maimonides, all the classic commentators, they all agree the Torah never commands the impossible. Feelings are real. Fear will come. And the high priest names it. Doesn't condemn it. What the high priest offers is not repression, it's validation. And the Torah uses the extreme example of being outnumbered in battle so that every parallel or lesser moment in Jewish history will have both a language for its fear and a blueprint for its response. And the Torah testifies for all of us, this is what you might encounter. And embedded in the words is exactly how the tough get going. Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, you are outnumbered. Al yera levavchem, your hearts may sink. Al tir'u, you may fear. Al tachbezu, you may panic. Al ta'artzu, you may be in dread. And it's not literary repetition, my friends. It is a taxonomy of feeling. A taxonomy of what's going on inside of each of us as we're bringing in 5786, and the Torah names 4 faces of it. 4 ways a single word in English, fear, can seize the Jewish heart. Listen. Al yira levavchem. This is the unknown. The Talmud explains it. When you, the Israelites, go out to war, you're going to hear a lot of noise. The pounding of hooves, the clash of iron, the shouting from across the field, and your heart may falter on account of what might happen. This is anticipatory fear, the worry of what if. The way imagination, it runs ahead of reality. Years ago, on Rosh Hashanah, I quoted the great sage, Shel Silverstein. Last night, while I lay thinking here, some what-ifs crawled inside my ear. Be mindful of the what-ifs creeping into your heart, says the high priest. 2, al tir'u, the other. This is the fear of the one standing across from you. Be aware, says the high priest. You may be outnumbered. and this will be intimidating. Al tachpezu, memory. This refers to the fear that isn't new at all. Tachpezu, the word in Hebrew, it means to scatter. Like a flock of birds, like a group of animals scatter when they're alarmed. The memory of the past may cause your thoughts to scatter and your hearts to panic, says the high priest. The past as a reminder. Al ta'artzu, consequence, the scariest perhaps of them all. This is the dread of what might be lost if the battle is lost. Family, future, continuity itself, the terror of what could vanish if things go wrong, our security, our children's safety, our story itself. And it's not abstract. Fear has four faces for us too. Think about it, the unknown. What are we asking? What will the Jewish future look like? What if American Jewry really is at the inflection point? What if the institutions we built, the schools, the federations, the movements, our synagogue can't hold the weight of a generation that loves its roots but resists its responsibilities? What if Israel, once the center of Jewish pride and strength, grows more fractured, its enemies louder, its alliances thinner? What if? The other. Anti-Semitism isn't theoretical. It's the neighbor, it's the stranger, it's the crowd that turns hostile when we simply step out as a Jew. It's the fear of being outnumbered, outshouted, out of place in a world that's suddenly glaring back at us with hostility. Memory. Every headline, every Instagram post, every Facebook post awakens ghosts. When present danger revives the panic that's buried in our Jewish memory, that's real. What's in front of us is heavy enough. Memory of the past multiplies it. The Shoah is not ancient history. Memory makes us flinch even when the present is less dire because we carry centuries of ghosts in our DNA. Consequence. We fear assimilation, silence, fragmentation, all of which will cover these high holidays. We fear that our children may choose comfort over covenant, that our unity may fray beyond repair, our voice will diminish in the family of nations. This is the dread of what could be lost, not our safety, our identity itself. But notice something extraordinary. The Torah's antidote is not psychological toughness. It's not denial. It's not even weapons. The priest steps forward and says one thing, Shema Yisrael. Why? Afilu ein bechem zuchut ela kriyat shema bilvad kedei atem. Rashi comments for us, you have no other merit. You know nothing else other than the Shema. You still deserve that. In other words, when the what-ifs, the other, the past, consequences terrify us, the answer is not to pretend we are fearless. The answer is to remember who we are. Lean into our Jewishness, our covenant, our God, Shema Yisrael, because Shema is more than a prayer. It is identity spoken out loud. It is the words we whisper to our children at night. It's the words we utter on our deathbeds. Across centuries, exiles, empires, the Jew keeps returning to this sentence. The farthest edge of the map, it still bends back to the Shema, even if every other ritual is stripped away. Whittled down by history, whittled down by distance, the Shema is still there, and I'll prove it to you. It reminds me of Rabbi Yosef Shlomo Kahanim, the Panovitcher Rav, blessed memory. He saved orphan Jewish children from Catholic orphanages after the Shoah, after the Holocaust. Priests and nuns were denying that there were any Jewish children in these orphanages. And the Rav, accompanied by American officers, he would go orphanage after orphanage after orphanage at bedtime. And as the children lied down to go to sleep, he would call out from the hallway, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And instinctively, some of the children in that room would raise a hand and cover their eyes, and he would say, you're coming with me. You don't belong here. Think about the brilliance of this. Shema is not a magical incantation. It doesn't erase chariots. It doesn't stop missiles. It won't defeat armies, and it certainly won't beat boycotts. What it does is locate us. It reminds us that we're not just individuals trembling in the wind. We're part of something larger, which is a covenant, a story, a people, and a purpose. On the one hand, this existential crisis looms, and we're told, be amazingly inclusive of other Jews. If all they know is the Shema, bring them in. When fear isolates, Shema gathers us together. Fear makes us doubt who we are. The Shema insists, this is who you are. You are a Jew, even if it's the only line you know. But then, Jewish law takes a particularistic turn. Thousands of years, our tradition divides public recitations into two categories. Those that you can say in any language, English, Russian, Spanish, Yiddish, any language. And those public recitations that must be said B'lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew. This phrase by the high priest, naming the emotions of facing existential crisis then and every other time since, the Shema, must be said in Hebrew. And why? Because these are identity-defining moments. Words are not just informative, my friends. They are performative. They do something to the people. And brilliantly, our tradition, it tells us this is not an affirmation of identity. It's a confession of identity. This is the time for confession. At the edge of battle, at the threshold of an existential crisis, the nation must sound like itself. It's not just comfort, it's a commanded belonging. The Shema, it fuses law and spirit. At the front, the fusion becomes morale. It's not hype. It's not drumbeat. It's commanded identity. Achad Ha'am, great 19th century Zionist, he wrote about this. He wrote about Hebrew. He said, a people's language is not just a tool of speech. It's the very soul of the nation. Revive the tongue, you revive the people. We confront these four faces of fear. And Torah teaches the act of claiming our own language and our own name is itself an act of resistance. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Yeah, Coach Thomas had a line for the locker room. We have a line for a covenant that spanned 3,300 years. When the going gets tough, and it is, the Torah doesn't hand us a slogan. It gives us a summons. It's a summons. Jewish toughness has never been about rage. It's never been about bravado. It's never been about perfect faith. Jewish toughness is the trembling Israelite in Deuteronomy, outnumbered, heart pounding, knees unsteady, the what-if screaming in his ear, panic building in his bones. The soldier stood at the crossroads of history and holiness, conscripted into something larger. Carry Torah. Carry its revolutionary ethic into the world. Prove that faith and morality don't retreat even before surging armies of hate. And the battlefield was real for the Israelite, but it was also a spiritual charge. And the high priest steps forward, and in that moment, he says to them all and reminds them, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Not a slogan, not then, not now, a summons. It's a conscription. Our battle is different. We're not summoned into iron and fire, but into covenant and courage. Ask your college kids. We are summoned into building a kehillah, a house of holiness that's made of people, not concrete or brick, of mitzvot, not monuments, chesed, not hashtags. And we've said together before, our synagogue is a Jewish refuge, the collective effect of Jews who opt into the story. Jews by choice, all of you, tuning lives to an unambiguously Jewish cadence, making something that none of us could make on our own. We can't do this alone. That's the charge of 5786. Answer the noise of the world. For the ancient Israelites, it was the pounding of hooves. It was the clash of iron. It was the shouting from across the field. And for us, it sounds different, but the noise of the world still intends to intimidate and instigate fear. And we are obligated to answer it with the invitation of our own story, Shema Yisrael. We belong to something bigger than what frightens us. Shema Yisrael. We carry something older, far more sacred than what threatens us. Shema Yisrael. We are bound by something stronger than what we imagine may break us. Yeah, the going is tough. I feel it too. But we're an extraordinary people. We have crossed seas. We have wandered deserts. We have outlived empires. We kiss the plaques of those who carried this story before we did, and now it's our turn. Our turn to build, our turn to bless, our turn to teach, our turn to risk, our turn to pray, to sing, and our turn to live as Jews out loud. It is our turn, my friends, to answer history, not with silence and not with shame, but with the oldest, boldest words that we have. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. I wish you all a wonderful 5786, a Shana Tova U'Mituka. I ask you please to rise as we continue with Musaf.